This meeting to order for the Board of Trustees of the Town of Buena Vista. Can I have roll call, please?
Mayor Lacy,
Here.
Trustee Eckstein,
Here.
Trustee Fay, here. Trustee Nyberg,
Here.
Trustee Road,
Here.
Trustee Swisher, here. Trustee Volpe.
Here.
Thank you all very much. Will you please rise and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That was cool. I will remind everyone, including myself, to silence or turn off your cell phones, please. And we have a proclamation. Mental Health Month 2021, Tools to Thrive. Whereas mental health is essential to everyone's overall health and well-being. And whereas all Americans face challenges in life that can impact their mental health, especially during a pandemic. And whereas prevention is an effective way to reduce the burden of mental health conditions. And whereas there are practical tools that all people can use to improve their mental health and increase resiliency. And whereas mental health conditions are real and prevalent in our nation. And whereas with effective treatment, those individuals with mental health conditions can recover and lead full, productive lives. And whereas each business, school, government agency, healthcare provider, organization, and citizens share the burden of mental health problems and has a responsibility to promote mental wellness and support prevention and treatment efforts. Therefore, I, Duff Lacey, Mayor Buena Vista, along with Valley-wide health systems, proclaim May 2021 as Mental Health Month. I also call upon the citizens, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, and schools to commit our community to increasing awareness and understanding of mental health, the steps our citizens can take to protect their mental health, and the need for appropriate and accessible services for all people with mental health conditions. Thank you all. Next item is agenda adoption. Are there any comments, changes to the agenda? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve or deny or approve with amendments.
We approve the agenda.
Thank you. Second, Nyberg. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Trustee Eckstein,
Yes.
Trustee Fay,
Yes.
Trustee Nyberg,
Yeah.
Trustee Road,
Yes.
Trustee Swisher,
Yes.
Trustee Volpe.
Yes.
Thank you all very much. Next item is consent agenda. Are there any questions or comments on the consent agenda? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Trustee Swisher.
Second.
Second, Trustee Fay. Further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Eckstein,
Yes.
Trustee Fay,
Yes.
Trustee Nyberg,
Yes.
Trustee Road,
Yes.
Trustee Swisher,
Yes.
Trustee Volpe.
Yes.
Thank you all very much. Next item on the agenda is public comment. As before, you will have 3 minutes to talk, and you can raise your hand in the Zoom chat box. On your phone, you can press *9 and the meeting host will prompt you to unmute when it's your turn to speak. We will take a look and see if there's anybody wishing to make a comment. Nothing in chat.
Nothing in chat. I don't see any hands raised.
No hands raised. Thank you all. I close public comment. First item on the agenda is item A, Phase 1 in the marijuana establishment license lottery. The board will hold a lottery drawing to select the applicant that will proceed to phase 2 marijuana establishment license application process. If you will all bear with us for just a short second here, we will get set up.
Do you want to intro the process real
Quick
quick?
intro process and give us a little bit of history real quick. Let's see, in November 4th, 2020 elections, the voters approved ballot question 2A, allowing for 2 marijuana shops within the town limits. On November 24th, the Board of Trustees adopted ordinance number 16, amending the municipal code outlining the phase 1 and phase 2 application process and zoning regulations for medical and retail marijuana. 2 stores have the option to operate as a medical, retail, or a retail and medical shop. Ascend has held a medical license since 2019, plans to retain that licensure, and has applied for the retail license. Applicants had 60 days between June 6th and March 8th to submit a phase 1 application. 21 applications were received and reviewed. Applicants that submitted incomplete applications were notified and given 14 days to cure their deficiencies. 20 applications are eligible for tonight's lottery drawing for the second license holder. 13 applicants indicated that they would apply for both the medical and retail license if selected, and 7 would be applying for only a retail license. And our process is that we have 3x5 cards on the board, the names of the applicants, and also the managers, if it was tied to a business, is also listed. What Philip and I will do is we'll fold the cards, fold them again, and then seal them. We'll put them in a clear bowl, and then Mayor Lacey will draw them.
Good use of the zoning map.
Thank you. Bring them to you if you want to seal.
Okay,
If you want help, holler.
all right, thank you.
Yes. So you're already ahead of me. Real pocket.
Nobody is counting.
How long it's taking me?
No, meaning how you're not keeping up.
Oh.
So don't worry,
I feel like everybody's watching.
only your back.
That's true, right? I need to watch where I'm facing.
No, you're all good.
Make sure they're all open.
Practice your folding skills.
We did.
We did.
All of you better come up, but you got one thing.
That's because she's gonna work like this.
Yeah, I've been kind of tucked in for a few weeks now.
You guys could become CPAs, cut, paste, and assemble.
Uh-huh. You've learned those things. Funny how you don't forget certain things.
I resemble that remark.
See, Paul, I knew they would fill the void
Yes.
while we're doing this.
It's actually going faster, I think, than what you timed.
Yeah. Okay.
We have a lot more people on tonight than normal.
I think there was more attendees, wasn't there?
Yes.
31.
Was
Yep.
it? Okay. I think they were all waiting for item B,
Yeah, I think they're waiting for the fees.
the fees, that's what it is for the
Fee
airport.
schedule.
That's why I'm here.
We're getting close, gang, we're getting close.
Doing great.
How are we doing, Jeff?
It's good to me there, Mayor.
Be the blackjack dealer.
Has there been other lotteries like this in towns for things?
We should try this
No, I
in
don't
more
recall.
votes.
I don't recall.
More decisions that we make.
I
Maybe
just
that's
don't.
how we should make our decisions.
When we do candidates for the ballot, like in the trustees,
that's
this
right.
is what we do for the candidates.
Oh, right,
For the
just
order.
like the order on the ballot.
Yep.
All the cards are
You
on.
guys already know,
Interesting.
get the system
I
down.
didn't think about that. I've never been involved in that either.
Okay, Mayor, mix them up.
Okay. And nobody can see me. You know, so what's new? Okay, got one. And I'm gonna have to have assistance, I'm sure. Where's Vanna?
Oh,
The name is PCG1 LLC, Sean Davis.
And I confirm what Mayor Lacy read.
I will, but if I just.
There you go. All right.
Thank you all very much. I'm gonna give this. Perfect.
Thank you very much.
Do we need to explain a little bit about phase two, or did Paula cover that?
As far as the phase two, Sean Davis will now enter phase two application process. And there's a timeline on what he's gonna have to meet, and that's in the ordinance. So,
Okay,
and if it is determined that he cannot meet those timelines and things, then we will start this portion over again. That these 19 names that are still in the bowl, if Sean cannot meet the requirements, then we will do the lottery again
Okay.
with these applicants.
okay. Thank you all very much. Moving forward. I think Jeff did say it was gonna take 6 months.
It's a bit of a process, but hopefully it's fair and reasonable. Yeah, it gets the town where it wants to be.
Thank you, Paula, Philip.
Thank you.
everybody involved. Keep moving forward. Next item is the Ready Grant Match request. Jamie will present from Central Mountain Small Business Development Center and give us a proposal to create a resilient entrepreneurial ecosystem utilizing a DOLA Ready Grant and a cash match contribution from town. Do you need to lead in, Philip?
Yeah, just real quick. We had Jamie here tonight, and Jamie, before you get going, I just want to make sure, is there anybody else that's going to speak that I need to move to a panelist, or will you be the speaker tonight?
I am the speaker tonight, and I'm sorry for all of your bad luck.
No, we're very fortunate. So I'll turn it directly to you. I think you've got some good information here, so I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, and I'm not sure, did the town trustees, did they get the handout of this, or are we just going through it on the slide deck?
We're going through it on the slide deck, and they have it in the packet as well.
Okay, because the end changed, so that's why I was asking.
Okay.
So town trustees, thank you for your time. Mayor Lacy and Philip, thank you also, and thanks for this opportunity to present. When I was talking to Philip last week, I realized that many of you may not even know who the heck Central Mountain SBDC is and what we do, so that you can then see how that the scope of work that we're talking about in this ecosystem goes beyond our silo. So I'm going to do a quick introduction to what I do with Central Mountain SBDC. I'm the center director. And we're actually funded federally through the SBA. And then Chaffee County is our main host, and I'm actually a Chaffee County employee. And then Park and Lake County are co-hosts. And what we offer to entrepreneurs and small businesses as well as nonprofits is free confidential consulting. And that consulting is through our local consultants, as well as we have access to statewide consultants if it's a unique area of expertise. And while that is free to our businesses, we do pay our counselors $35 an hour. And then we offer free or low cost training. And we have access to money and capital. This last year, COVID year, it's really been focused on federal support programs like EIDL and PPP and the Climber Fund through the state and those types of things. But typically, we also work with Office of Economic Development and International Trade, who actually oversees all of our centers in the state of Colorado, as well as regional lenders and local banks. Next slide.
My little clicker's not working. Let's try that. There we go.
So I won't get into all this training, but I just want to show that this is the training that we're offering at our center. The newest one is trying to teach childcare owners the business side of childcare as opposed to the very needed caregiving for children. And so we really have an array of training sessions. And next slide. Including some unique sessions in our area, the Power of We, which is women entrepreneurs, as well as we have a local expert on pivoting and scaling. Now we have several, and so we have a series on that, as well as online support. Next slide. So in summary, our center in 2020 actually trained 696 attendees, and those were attendees from Chaffee, Park, and Lake counties. We worked with 270 different clients. Usually we did several sessions with each of those 270 clients, but we did assist that number locally. And then in 2020, we assisted with 75 startups, and we have another 15 startups that we're working with now in 2021. And obviously they're all the way from I have an idea to I have all my funding and I need a location or whatever. So we try to help in all spectrums of startups. We also assisted clients with $2,611,000 in capital formation, and granted, a lot of that was COVID disaster funding. And then our budget in our region for 2020 was $231,000. So that was used for training events, my salary, all the counselors, and any other support. And then in 2021, our budget is $199,288. And to date, we've funded $60,000 of this resilient entrepreneur ecosystem. And that's in combination with our center, as well as Chaffee County had kicked in an extra $10,000 to get to the 60 to support paying some consultants to help us on this journey. And next slide. So how this really came to pass, the plan that we're about to pitch to you, is in July, with the state and federal funding, even though it wasn't pretty rolling out, we were able to help businesses and entrepreneurs stay in business and sustain the COVID disaster. But really by July, we also had lots of businesses we couldn't help, especially in the service providing area, let alone address workforce issues. And I'm very empathetic. So it was killing me that we couldn't save businesses that had to go out of business when they had years of good years of business. And so it was very obvious, a lot of things, which I'll share in a moment. And then, also there was the the silver lining in COVID is that it really opened the door to a whole bunch of collaborative opportunities, everything from us working jointly with SBA and OEDIT, our local regional rural centers working together. You look at the Chafee Coalition that has their biweekly meetings to kind of navigate through COVID. And then we also formed some partnerships with Startup Colorado as well as a variety of stakeholders. Next slide. So what happened is I realized early on, because I hired Adrian Reef, who is a thought leader. He's very into regenerative innovation models, as well as an investor. So we hired him to help me try to figure out what we can do to support small businesses and entrepreneurs in a larger way. And it became evident that we have to diversify everything from plumbers to childcare providers to new tech industries. So the whole spectrum of diversification. We also knew that change was happening quicker and quicker with or without a plan. And it was adding new stressors to all of us, particularly entrepreneurs, but we've all seen it with childcare and housing and workforce and even access to products to package their own things that they make. So it became a big problem. And I realized early on that adding new businesses and finding educating workforce cannot be successfully implemented without addressing community scale problems, which is like we talked childcare, and I'll use an example of that in a minute. And this complex adaptive challenge is really facing all of rural America. Next slide. So Adrian and I mapped out the region's stakeholders, and you'll see that in all the different bubbles. We addressed that there's the whole entrepreneurial group that we will tap into with their energy and innovations to address our community scale problems. But then there's also stakeholders that can address those in public-private sector partnerships. We need more access to capital and financing, and there's a lot of local stakeholders already involved, but we need to develop that further. And then education and workforce development, tapping into CMC, our local schools. We even have a little school called the Link School here, and other ecosystem builders. We did get buy-in from 11 stakeholders and 85 business owners and entrepreneurs. So this plan that we're presenting is actually their co-creation, not just something I thought of or Adrian thought of, or later on we brought in Jake Rashavi. This is something that came from our community. And we contracted a short-term business traffic facilitator. That's hard to say. That is actually Jake Rashavi, which I'll talk about in a moment. Next slide. So what this ecosystem does is it, as I've said several times now, applies entrepreneurial energy to solving community scale challenges. It offers increased sales and cash management processes for businesses, job creation and or retention, increased wage diversity, talent retention and brain gain, future economic resilience, and increased capital investment into our area. Next slide. This is, we identified that there needed to be a business traffic facilitator to actually be if you look at that map, the little yellow bubbles are myself, but also this facilitator position to connect all the stakeholders with the entrepreneurs and with the educators or with the finance, so that we create the self-sustaining ecosystem. It was identified early on that it has to be a non-governmental position because a lot of small business owners and entrepreneurs don't necessarily trust government. And the idea is that this plan becomes self-sustaining in 2 years. So while we're applying for this DOLA grant, and hopefully with your cash match, it will be self-sustainable. So 2 years from now, we're not going to come back and say we need another 2 years. And the DOLA grant is only for this one point. Next slide. We will be pursuing these different grants. The first DOLA Economic Development Ready Grant is what I call it, opens up. It was May 14th. Now they've extended it 1 more week. And this is where the plan has changed. Chaffey County last week committed to up to $70,000 in cash match, and they asked for us to get buy-in from the different towns. So Buena, Vista, Salida, and Poncha Springs. Now that cash match, because the plan has changed, and I'll share that in a minute, is actually $15,500 around instead of $15,000. We also will be going after a rural business development grants and OEDIT advanced industries grants, because we can support different ecosystems when we have identified entrepreneurs and small businesses in certain niches. Next slide. So the REE program that we're proposing to DOLA, and you supporting it with your cash match, has these 9 different parts, if you will, and DOLA requires us to report the measurements that I'll share on the next slide that we have to obtain to continue to get the grant. So we're measured on what we say we're going to do, that we actually do it. And in the plan, and this is where I should mention Jake Rishavi, is actually from Denver West. He was the 3rd consultant we hired in January to help us figure out this DOLA grant. But for 10 years, he's done ecosystem development on the Front Range in the Denver West area. So we brought someone on that actually knows what they're doing, and we're not just saying, this is what we'd like to do. And in this, it's a micro accelerator program, which is 8-week accelerator programs that go several times a year. I believe in the grant for the first 2 years, we have 4 different accelerators over those 2-year periods. And we'll add more if we have interest and if we have capacity. And in those accelerators, it takes an entrepreneur through his business concept all the way to matching with investors and those types of things. So they really get hands-on training to either start a business or scale a business. Then we're working on a mentorship network, which is not just tapping into our local mentors, but also matching entrepreneurs' needs to those mentors, in addition to the SBDC consulting I already talked about. We're going to coordinate education and training, have more thoughtful education and training with all our different stakeholders so that we're not duplicating efforts and we're reinforcing opportunities. And then I will talk about this in a minute. We actually launched the online collaboration platform for entrepreneurs last week, and I'll share some slides from that in a moment. We're going to have more meetups and focus groups, and it's really a programmatic, thoughtful center of gravity for entrepreneurs to meet in different industry sectors and also collaborate with public-private sectors. Create community-inspired summits and forum. Part of this is some of the programs that I do, but there'll be other programs that the EDC will be rolling out, including pitch events, Idea Fest, and Access to Money Forum, and the accelerator programs. And then SBDC's contribution is we're doing a Power of We, which is a women's entrepreneur conference in September. We're trying to convince the Surf Hotel to let us have it there. The Mount Princeton was already booked. And then we're going to have an outdoor adventure summit in October that will be at Mount Princeton. It's, I believe, the third week in October. And the idea behind that is to bring all the winter and summer entrepreneurs and small businesses involved in outdoor adventure together and talk about some needs assessments and those things, but also invite Garna and talk about how do we protect our public lands? How do we educate all the tourists that are coming? I know when I was in a Garna presentation, I don't know, a few months ago, they had a statistic that last year we had 4 million visitors and it's projected to be 8 million in rather short order. So this is where public-private combination events that can address this community scale problem of public land use can be addressed. Then they'll be having incubators or work share environments, a big push on access to capital with tapping into local angel investors, as well as the establishment of a community revolving loan fund. I know that the EDC is working in conjunction with the Community Foundation and the county to kind of figure out how to create that. And then a whole needs assessment in all the different areas that are hurting us: housing, childcare, co-working, those types of subjects. Sorry, I'm trying to talk so fast. So next slide. So with this plan in the DOLA grant, we have to have measured points over the 2-year period and report those. And those measurements mainly will be done through the SBDC because we have a platform, a federal platform that's called Center IC that makes these measurements, but the EDC will also be making measurements. And so those measurements in 2 years are in black, but because this ecosystem plan was a 3 to 5 year plan, the red is the end of 5-year goals. And do you need me to read those to you, or you can see them?
I can see them.
They can see them.
Okay. Okay, cool. Next slide. We did launch our new Central Mountain Entrepreneurs platform on the Startup Colorado platform, which is an incredible new platform, which I'll share in slides in a moment. But we had a kickoff launch party and it was really successful, especially considering it was a virtual event. We had 79 people registered, 59 attendees. We had Senator Bennett and Hickenlooper's office attend, as well as several different government entities to find out what this was all about. But mainly it was entrepreneurs and small businesses. Chuck Sullivan, who is an ecosystem builder throughout rural Colorado, was our MNC. And so he talked about why ecosystems were so important. We had some really cool speakers from local examples. The whole idea was to say this plan, share the platform, but show examples of what we're talking about by local entrepreneurs already doing that work. As an example, we had a quiz: what does Rapid Gas, Coltrane Music Academy, Clean Republic, and Cause Plus Medic have in common? And that's Robin Vega and Coleman Smith, who are serial entrepreneurs, and between them have those companies here in Buena Vista. Although Rapid Grass does tour all over the world. And so it showed an example of what local businesses are doing in regards to tapping into technology, because Coltrane Music Academy now has a whole new online platform. And Coleman also entertained us. And then we had a pitch from a local dentist who created this new technological platform that interfaces with consumers and dentists to create a kind of a relationship background, but also network for them for you to get to know your dentist and the procedures that they offer and feel comfortable about those things. So we showed how tech can fit into our local businesses. And it was very successful. So next slide. The platform itself is really cool. This screen share, we had 74 participants on our ecosystem just in the Central Mountain as part of the whole state platform. But that has grown since then. And next slide. It has that Facebook kind of type interface, but it also has a member peer-to-peer group network on the backside of this ecosystem, so that entrepreneurs can ask other entrepreneurs questions. They can get to know each other. They can see that there's these really cool entrepreneurs in our area if they're thinking of coming here. And then we have all the resource pages as in support on those little subheads on there. Next slide. So this budget completely changed. And I am gonna am I able to put in the chat a new link?
You could share your screen as well or you can put a link in and I can open it up either way.
Yeah, I like you doing the back end technology, but I will share my screen if you need me to.
No, I'll try.
I just got this at 6 o'clock tonight from Chaffee County Economic Development and Bob Christensen from the town, or from Chaffee County, excuse me. And they changed the ask and the plan. And the reason they did that is they ended up hiring Jake Rashavi as the new Chaffee County Economic Development Director, which then changed the need in this plan to have a director caliber person. We always had in mind that it would be Jake to run this ecosystem because he already knew how to do it. He lives in Salida and again has done this work for 10 years. And so the EDC came back with, we will promise to devote 25% of Jake's time on this program. And then in addition, they will hire a salaried person more at my salary level to do, be the business traffic facilitator, because all that work still absolutely needs to happen. And by doing that, it then reduces the DOLA grant ask, I believe, down to 156,000. We're looking at this together almost. Yeah, 156,250. It shares the breakdown of those matches, and then it shares down the cash match ask. So it reduces Buena Vista's contribution to $11,537.50 rather than the 15 that I was originally going to ask tonight. And I think it was Mayor Lacy suggested that I would share an example of how public-private combinations could work in this ecosystem, and also combining stakeholder energy with entrepreneurial just enthusiasm. And so childcare is an example. Already we are meeting with Joseph Teipel, who he actually coordinated this initiative with the Community Foundation. We're meeting with Chaffee County Housing, and we're meeting with childcare. And I'm doing a similar thing with childcare in Park County. And we're trying to match through public-private sector partnerships, either counties or angel investors that have a piece of property that say, this is a great place for a childcare center. Here's the land. Now we need to get access to different grants to help build it. We need angel investors or typical lenders But on the SBDC side, we're going to train that childcare provider with how to do business. And even if necessary, how to do pitches to get additional funding, because their expertise usually is in child education and not in the business side of this. So that's kind of an example of how that energy would all go together. Mayor Lacy, did I explain that well enough, do you think?
I think you did fine.
So that's my ask tonight. We have this DOLA grant that we will either apply for based on what each town can contribute and combined with the Chaffey County match. And that we were hoping to turn that in this Thursday, but we just found out we had a week extension. But so that's what we're asking, and please, please.
Question.
I have a question.
Yes.
Jamie, this 11,537.50, that's split between the 2 years?
Correct. I think they're asking if you would commit to it. We're asking that you commit now, and I think they're even asking that you put that it would be over at Chaffey County, because Chaffey County actually will be applying for this DOLA grant and be the regulator of the grant. But it's only 11,000, whatever. You could divide that by 2, what we're asking each year. But I think he is asking that you commit to that and even put it almost in escrow the first year for both years. Did that answer that question?
It does. Thank you, Jamie.
Okay.
And this is just a one-time ask.
The one-time ask, the whole point with the DOLA grant is that they will only fund programs that become self-sustainable. So they don't want us creating this never-ending ask.
You said that it was possible to lose the DOLA grant.
It is. And
if you lose the DOLA grant, do we get our money refunded because you weren't?
Yeah, and we won't be awarded the grant till July 1st. So you wouldn't even submit the matching funds until after we were awarded. And we also EDC and SBDC are committed to do this work. We need more funding, but we'll continue to do parts of this even if we're not funded with DOLA.
Other questions for Jamie?
And we had commitments from the county and Salida and Pacha yet on this?
We have the county commissioners officially agreed to up to $70,000 cash match last Tuesday. Jake is on the Town of Salida Trustees meeting next week. So it was really good. This DOLA grant got extended. And Pancha, we're on following that, but because that's a smaller amount, the county said they would cover that in the short term. And if we're not able to get Pancha funding, that we can go out and try to get some other sponsorships. But Salida and Buena Vista have to agree in order to make this work.
Just an idea for the board to contemplate. We had increased our contribution to the EDC in 2021 by $6,000. Where'd it go? $6,900 from previous years, up from 5,000 to 11,910. So there's a spot in the current budget that we could pull from as part of this, if the board would be interested in that. We have not heard from the EDC that they need that full amount, so we could.
Comments, trustees, questions?
It's very ambitious. And I think that small businesses are really where there's a lot of potential for us. And I think small businesses create a lot of jobs. I just would worry a little bit about your focus. You know, you have a lot of tasks ahead of you with the 9 different avenues to pursue.
Agreed. And how we determined how to do that was to pull in the other stakeholders so that it's not just SBDC, because I know I can't do it in my silo exclusively. So it's combining EDC's work, SBDC's work, Community Foundation work, CMC. So it's combining all the different resources to achieve this.
That helped.
Yeah, it does. I think it's just complicated
It
to
is.
accomplish too many things.
I think the fact, I guess when you and I talked was the addition, and I don't recall his name, but he was going to, his expertise, I guess is the best way to put it. He had a good hands-on for how to work this is the way I'll present that.
Yeah, how we, why we really pinpointed Jake Rishavi, because his 10 years of work doing this in Denver West. So it's a proven process that he's done before. So we're not gambling on hiring someone that's very ambitious and very talented, but maybe not have the the expertise to do it. So we're not gambling that he can do the work. He knows how to do the work, but we have to combine all these other resources. If we just hired anyone, it might take them 2 years to get on board before we're actually producing some more results.
Other questions?
Just a quick one. You had me at silos with you guys and the EDC, and then you included CMC in there. How did I didn't see where they fit into this or how they fit into this?
Okay, I don't know if we want to go back to that mapping bubble ecosystem, but education and workforce development is a whole bubble on its own that needs to happen. And CMC is part of that. It's particularly on workforce development and even in entrepreneurial development. So they are one of the stakeholders that are involved to create this sustainable ecosystem over 3 to 5 years.
Thank you.
Amy?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, Jamie, it's Amy Eckstein. Yeah, Philip, I'm glad you brought up that budgeting because it was such a big jump from EDC last year, and this would be over that. So I think that would be great if we could split some of that up, but we can talk about it during budget season. And if I may, just an observation, of course, it's great to support new and existing business and diversify our economy. However, we're in a massive affordable housing crisis. And
Yes.
I think it's lovely for 300 new jobs. I'm just not sure where all these people are going to be housed. So I think that would be my concern with the plan. I see it was addressed in one of the bubbles, but I really see that could hinder the success of this lovely project would be my concern.
Yes, no, housing, childcare, and workforce are the 3 things that can hinder a resilient entrepreneur ecosystem, which is why we ended up having to address that with a plan instead of just saying, we're going to get 300 new entrepreneurs or new different workforce people here. And it's not realistic. We have to address childcare and housing and broadband all at the same time. And so that's why the mapping was developed. And the needs assessment on how can we match public, private sectors to address housing. So entrepreneurs that are in housing can help address that along with government and community foundation to address those needs, as well as I know the state has, that's a huge Governor Polis initiative, and our centers are under Office of Economic Development, which Polis directs. So they all are in play and they all have to be addressed at the same time. Did that make sense? Or am I still just, okay.
Obviously, it's everything has to work together. Any one thing by itself probably would not suffice. You know, you can have the education, but if you don't have the people that are looking for it, it's not going to happen. You can have the financing, but or people looking for financing, but financing is not involved, obviously it's not going to happen. Is there any, I guess the question that comes to mind, and you think of entrepreneurs, is there any business, let's say, that wouldn't be entertained? Would any takers be, come in and talk?
You mean any businesses have access to this?
Yes.
It's any idea. That's why we were working with those 85 startups. They had everything from just an idea to actually being able to make this work here in Chaffee County. And so we talk with everyone at that. I think SBDC is probably the entry point for that. But then Wendell and I've already been doing this. When it gets to the next level, I introduce them to Wendell, or I introduce them to Joseph. Becky Gray with Chaffee Housing. So it really is interconnected already. It's just we're all at capacity and it needs to be scaled faster and we need more stakeholders involved quicker. So that's where it really grew beyond what we can handle.
And so by putting this all together through this grant process, and what's made available to you, you're able to bring everybody to the same table.
Yes. And Joseph has even started that. With EDC housing and childcare, we've already had 2 meetings on that subject, but the missing part of that is then pulling in entrepreneurs and even going out and trying to get new home builders that do affordable housing, different projects. That hasn't been pursued. We're just dealing lately with what's incoming instead of creating a plan to address what we really need.
Trustees.
Yeah, I actually like the goals, or the 9 things that you have on page 43. And, I just feel like it's going to be a real challenge for you to meet your goals that you outline on page 44. But I certainly honor what you're trying to do, and I would support it.
Would you like to make a motion to direct staff to put that funding available?
Yeah, I would make a motion to allocate $5,000 from the budget that we established for the EDC, and then the rest of it, $6,500, $3,750, to be a budget adjustment.
Thank you. That's perfect.
Second.
I have a second. Trustee Volpe, further discussion?
I'd just like to say, I agree, lofty goals. It's lofty goals, but it's money well spent. The small investment that we would be making is completely worth it. So.
And my input, I think it shows where Dole is coming from, saying here's how we're willing to help you if you have a plan. here, give us a plan, show us what you can do, and we're going to help you with the funding to get started. And I think that speaks volumes too. It's not them just coming up with something and saying, hey, Bill is saying, here it is. You got 2 years, show me.
Got the right players at the table now. I think that, again, the silos, bring in, Chief Housing and EDC and Jamie and Joseph. I think that's a potent group. So let's do it.
Anybody else? Roll call, please.
Trustee Eckstein,
Yes.
trustee Fay,
Yes.
trustee Nyberg,
Yes.
trustee Rowe,
Yes.
trustee Swisher,
Yes.
trustee Volpe.
Yes.
Thank you all very much. And thank you, Jamie.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is a presentation of fire services for the town of Buena Vista. Town administrator will present the findings and recommendations from the Fire Services Steering Committee.
Here we go. All right. So page 50 of your packet is a short presentation that I'll go through, and feel free to interrupt as we go, or we can have a discussion afterwards, but I'll go through this. So just kind of recap of where we've been at the beginning of 2021, staff came to the board proposing that we put together a steering committee to evaluate our fire services in and around the town, looking at it as an opportunity, knowing that we're facing ever increasing costs with providing an adequate fire service within the town, and the challenges that we've seen in recent years with staffing and equipment. We wanted to take a good long look at what are the possibilities out there, especially with Chaffee County Fire Protection District being a very viable partner for the town. And so the board agreed with it at that time. And so we put a steering committee together back in the January timeframe. And basically we took members from the town and members from Chaffee County Fire Protection District. And you can see here on this slide, we eventually landed on Scott Leonard and Tom Navretti from Chaffee County Fire, in addition to Fire Chief Robert Bertram. And then we had trustees Devin Rowe and David Volpe, as well as myself. And we got together several times over the last few months, and we really wanted to kind of just step back and not really come in with any preconceived notion of what the right answer is or what limitations we have, and just spend time with our teams, the fire teams, both for BV Fire and Chaffee County Fire, and understand what's out there. That included station tours, talking with staff, going through the different processes, looking at existing equipment, kind of getting a better idea overall of what exists and how these organizations are currently structured and what those costs are. So I wanted to just highlight here that one, the desired outcome from the group was to bring back a proposal on how we move forward. And so that's what we have tonight, is that recommendation for the board to consider. And the other thing I wanted to highlight is really the mission. And it wasn't, focused on just financials or just focused on specific people or pieces of equipment or anything like that. We were really focused on what's the most efficient way to provide an outstanding service for our community. And I think we stuck to that pretty well throughout this analysis. If there's financial savings to be had, great, but that was not the primary focus going into this. So what were the three key findings from our steering committee? So first, we definitely recognize that there's a redundancy of resources. When you take a look at the facilities and equipment and personnel, there is a lot sitting right here in a very small radius in terms of equipment that's there and facilities and people that are involved with providing these services. So we definitely saw a significant amount of overlap there. The next thing was really digging into what BV Fire and what the town has directed BV Fire to respond to over the last 5 years, primarily has been medical response. Looking at 5 years worth of data, we really were seeing about 70 up to 80% of our call volume being response to medical calls as opposed to fire-related calls or auto accidents and things of those nature. So we decided at that point to pull in Chaffey County EMS to provide a deeper dive into, okay, what is the value add in those scenarios, and really what is Chaffey EMS seeing as needed moving forward in terms of mutual aid or even auto aid to certain calls. And so we came to the conclusions based on all of that, that there was pretty minimal benefit. Not to say that there's zero benefit or that our staff hasn't been providing outstanding service, but when you look at patient care and what's needed on the scene, a vast majority of those medical calls didn't have a large value add by our teams responding auto aid to every single one of those calls. Also, another key component of that is it's very, very difficult to maintain those medical skills through staffing, especially when you're looking at some of the advanced skill sets that are needed. It's just very difficult to keep up with appropriate skill levels there. So that was something that we got out of those discussions with EMS as well. And then finally, we found that Chaffey County Fire definitely has a model that is working, and we believe that could scale to support the town and the town's needs for services. And so that's both looking at facilities, and right now they have two that one of them, Station 1, is in town limits off Antero Circle. And the other station, Station 3, is just on the outskirts of our border on County Road 306 or West Main Street. So looking at the staffing and the equipment and the facilities, but then also their staffing model, their combination of volunteers, residents, and then their paid staff. We felt like all of those provided a very reliable response when we were looking at the data and talking with their teams. So we felt like that was definitely a model that we were comfortable with when considering that supporting the town. So this is a very high level summary of what we got out of studying the call response for BV Fire over the last 5 years, and then how that translates into what we would propose Chaffey Fire providing for us moving forward. So you can see here that the blue section of the large pie chart is what we're calling medical other. That's, as you can see, on average, it's the majority of the calls that we respond to. Again, it has provided a service to our town, but when you look at the actual value add, it's pretty minimal. On the other hand, there are some medical responses where aid from the fire department is definitely beneficial to secure the scene. And so we looked at those, we called those out as roughly 16 calls a year, situations where more staffing is needed at the scene, or to get people there faster because of a potential delayed response from EMS. there's a value add there for a mutual aid response from the fire department. So that's 16 on this pie chart. And then the rest is in this 110, and then we kind of broke that up over here in this secondary pie chart, where we're looking at response to fire situations, auto accidents, or other kinds of incident responses like fire drills, special events, and airport standbys when we have all the testing and things going on at the airport. So those are things that we definitely want to see continue in our fire services support. So if you kind of, to summarize this, we're really looking at continuing this mutual aid for medical, which would be this 16. And then we're looking at continuing to respond to these other incident types as well. So, roughly a little over 100 calls a year in call volume, give or take, obviously depending on the year. So ultimately, what's the steering committee recommending to the board tonight for consideration? So one of the concepts that we considered was, hey, well, let's look at this fire authority concept that would create a new government structure over the combination of BV Fire and Chaffee County Fire. And this was an option that we considered throughout the whole discussion towards the end, when we started realizing that once we kind of focus in on the call volume that we're going to continue to respond to, where the real value add is, a fire authority adds a significant amount of overhead. You're creating a whole new government entity essentially to manage that. So it felt like overkill. And so in lieu of that, we felt it was much a better use of our time and resources to look at this as a service contract with Chaffee County Fire, utilizing an IGA that would pay them to provide fire services for the town. And so that would be a set fee every year that we would pay them for that. And we'll get into how that's structured in a moment. But Chaffee County Fire in turn would expand their staffing a bit and their skill sets to be able to handle what we're asking them to provide. And really that's looking at inspections. We have a lot of commercial activity, a lot of new buildings. We have short-term rentals. There's just a lot of activity where we need fire inspections and plan reviews. And then they would add in their staffing model, for these skill sets, they're also firefighters. So that would be one additional staffed firefighter. They would also look to potentially add a secondary mechanic who also serves as a firefighter responding to calls as well. So they would expand their organization a bit to handle the increased calls, but really half of the calls they're already responding to through mutual aid or auto aid. So they're already very involved with a lot of the calls that are happening already. So the net add to them is not drastic in terms of call volume, but the service levels are a bit more. And so that's where they would be shaping their staffing to keep up with areas that we've struggled with again, I'm really identifying that inspection areas is where we would need that help. This IGA, the service agreement would cover both operating and capital expenses. So again, the town would be paying a set amount each year that Chaffee Fire would be using not only to cover their operations, but their ongoing capital needs as well. So planning for new trucks, planning for all the stuff that we've been working on for a number of years for our fire department. In terms of BV Fire, what this would mean is that we would divest from BV Fire as a separate entity. We would no longer run two different fire departments. And so we would be moving away from BV Fire, out of our general fund. So that's a transition for our staff. That's a transition for our equipment and our facility. And so you can see there just kind of a high level what that would mean as next steps if the board decides to move forward in this direction. Some interesting colors. Hopefully you can see that a bit. Tried to make it a little bit more exciting here. So this is just a summary of the IGA, which is next on the agenda tonight. But I wanted to provide a very high level. What does the IGA include? So it includes the core services. So responding to emergency calls, obviously is the part of it. Fire code and interpretation and enforcement, arson investigation, development plan reviews, permits, and inspections. And again, with how much growth we have going on in town, this is a big area. And then prevention services. And essentially what this means is we want to carry on the tradition that BV Fire has done an outstanding job with in being active in our schools and being part of special events and being a part of the community. And we call that prevention services. It's really interacting with the community, being out there and doing educational things and making sure our community knows what those services are, who those people are, things like that. So that's the core services. Again, there's also the structure of how do we keep this going? What's the oversight? So accountability and cooperation. Obviously, if BV is going to be divesting from its own fire department, we're going to want to make sure that this is successful, that this format is successful, and we have ongoing checks and balances for how do we make sure that things are going well on both sides of this. The compensation model, how do we continue to do strategic planning? So again, our fees to Chafee Fire would cover normal capital planning and operational planning. But what if we're looking at other things in town, like our airport ever expands to handle commercial flights or something like that? How do we ramp up to make sure that our fire services are keeping up with those kinds of decision making? So it lays out how we would go about strategic planning, and then term and termination if we ever needed to get to that point of terminating this agreement. So that when we get to the IGA, that's essentially what it lays out. And let me talk a little bit about the compensation model. So the steering committee spent quite a bit of time wrestling with, well, what would be the compensation? What would be fair? What do we think is sustainable? What do we think we could explain to our constituents, Chafee County's constituents? And what we landed on was an equivalent amount as if all of town were part of the Chafee County Fire Protection District. So all of the properties within the town boundary, if they were part of the fire district, what would that total amount be? And so it's taking a look at the mill levy and specific ownership tax amount, equivalent amount, and that's what the town would be paying out of our general fund. We would be subtracting what we call dual protection properties. So those are properties in town limits that happen to be already a part of Chafee County Fire's district. So think about, there's properties on the north side of town. We do have some residential properties in town. The amounts for those properties would be subtracted out of what the town would be paying. So you can see that here in the dual protection amount. So this is looking at, okay, 2021, what would the numbers be? So this is looking at the assessed valuation for all of the properties within town. Comes out to a little over 287,000. You subtract the dual protection amount and you get to a mill levy amount of little over $250,000. We would then add a percentage based off of that for the specific ownership tax, which is an equivalent of about $30,000. And you get to that full year amount of $282,000. So we like this model because again, it's explainable, it's fair to both in-town property owners and constituents and people that are already part of the district. And we also like it because it's predictable. It's pretty steady. It won't fluctuate a great deal from year to year. And it's something that we can continue to pay out of our general fund. And the advantage for town on that is so our general fund is primarily built on sales tax revenues. And staff has said for a while now that we like the model because the people that visit our area pay into the sales tax model. And so it's a nice balance of people that both residents and visitors that have a pull or a demand on these services. So we would continue to pay that out of our general fund for now. So we're not looking at any elections or property tax increases or sales tax percentage increases through this model. Down at the bottom, I just explained that obviously we're well into 2021, so there would be a prorated amount for the first year using this same model and just taking how many days we have left in the year once this was to become effective. So that would come out to a little over $180,000 for 2021. I'll cover a little bit more and then I'll take a breath and then we'll get into question and answer because I know you all probably want to have some discussion here. So bear with me, appreciate your patience here. So what happens next for BB Fire? This is a big question. We've had a fire department for a long time here, so we don't take it lightly that this is a transition for not only our staff, but our community and the people that appreciate the history of BB Fire. So what happens next? So there's some nuances here that we're proposing. One is that the town can retain and continue to manage its own wildland program. This is a great opportunity for the town to continue to support a program that not only supports incidents around the country, but also as a great revenue source for the town that can continue to help pay for our fire services from year to year. So you can see there what that would require. Shauna Martinez, who currently manages that program, would stay on board. Her role, we would move from a part-time, about 30 to 32 hours a week, to a full-time position and move her into the finance department under Treasurer Stoke. We like that opportunity because her program ties very closely with our finance department. There's a lot of expenses and revenues and things like that that are part of that program. This will help her administer that program. It will also provide some additional capacities that are needed in our finance department. The second thing as part of this proposal is our interim fire chief, Chris Green, who's done an amazing job leading this department over the last 6-7 months, would stay on with town through the end of 2021. And the primary reason for that is we have a lot of work to do. Not only do we want to make sure the handoff with Chafee Fire is successful, but we need to do a lot with inventorying equipment and start disposing of that equipment. That can be a number of things. That can be transferring the equipment to other departments, to other fire stations, selling the equipment, and we're going to be doing a little bit of all of that if we get into that phase. So that's that part. We have 3 firefighters remaining on staff, and we have talked to them about this proposal. So this won't be the first time they would hear this discussion. They have provided an amazing service again for our town, and we very much respect what they've done. So we've given them a transition plan. And fortunately, they've been looking, and some have already found positions in other fire departments. So we've got a good transition plan set up with them. And then the fire station improvements that were part of the 2021 budget. The one thing that we will complete is the roof replacement. The material was ordered early in the year, and the contractor should be ready to install anytime now, but it's leaking pretty bad. And so we need to stop that. So the roof will be replaced. The other enhancements, we were looking at some other things with the exhaust system and plumbing and all of that, we will not pursue at this time. So I think, okay, and then in your packet, I just attached all the meeting minutes for your reference from the steering committee meetings that we had, just so you can kind of reference how those conversations went. So I will pause. Thank you very much for letting me speak so long. Trustee Rowe or Trustee Volpe were also instrumental in this. And I know we've got some folks on tonight as well. We do have Josh Hadley from Chafee EMS. We have Robert Bertram, Scott Leonard. So we do have several folks on. If there's any questions for them, they're available. Chris Green is on as well. So I will turn it over to the board for discussion.
Trustees.
What becomes of the building?
It's a great question. I'm starting to look at the potential of what could we get from selling it, knowing that we've identified the police station as a number one priority in terms of large capital project. I want to be able to provide the board an idea of what that property, the fire station property, could get for the town if we sold it on the market. There are some issues with the building. Clearly, we've looked at that, but it's also, it could be a great location for commercial activity or as a tax creator property for the town. Not to say that that's ultimately what we do, but we want to be prepared with some information for you all to consider with that. For now, it's going to continue to house our equipment until we get rid of the equipment. But I don't see it as a site that we need for town staffing needs. So it could be something that you all consider for selling or reuse with other entities in town. So more discussion to be had on that question.
Other questions? Go ahead, Trustee.
Just wondering if do we have any special concerns about the airport? You were talking about, if it became a commercial airport, but even in its current state, we were talking at one point about needing to buy a special fire truck to have out there. Does Chafee Fire bring anything like that to the table with, where they could protect the airport?
That's a great question. In discussions with Chief Bertram, we do not feel that an ARF truck is justified at this point. It's a very expensive piece of equipment, and plus there's skill sets required to operate that. So we don't feel like that's justified. Chafee County Fire doesn't feel like that's justified at this time. However, if the usage changes and we're seeing a lot more ongoing jet activity or something like that, it could open up that discussion again. Chafee Fire has responded to airport incidents through auto aid for a long time now. So they're very, very familiar with our airport. Half of the airport runway is currently in Chafee Fire district. So it's a dual protection property right now. So they're very familiar with it. They're ready to serve that fully.
Good. Will they be able to, do we provide for testing?
In terms of revenue?
No, for fire protection, while Boeing is there or whoever. We have fire guys out there all the time, so Chafee will be able to be there.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And that's paid from them directly to Chafee.
From the testing company to, yes. Yes, we would facilitate that as the airport owner, but we would route the payments to Chafee County Fire for that standby time. On a smaller scale, the same kind of model with short-term rental inspections. So currently our fire department inspects new short-term rentals. Chafee Fire would step into that role and we would pay them a portion for their time.
Will that change our rental fee?
Not this year, but it could moving forward.
Other questions?
Few questions. I've scribbled. The rate increases would be based on the mill levy. If they had a great need for capital needs, would it be like we would have to plan for that over some of our capital needs? And if we terminated the contract for any reason, we wouldn't have any equipment to back up on. It would be very expensive if this didn't work out to bring it back. So any money that was made off the selling of our equipment, would we put it in a special account in case this agreement didn't meet the town's needs? And on a lot of the medical responses, the fire department was arriving before EMS. Is EMS working on their response times?
So Josh Hadley's who is on. I'm not going to put him on the spot, but he certainly could chime in on that. We talked quite a bit about that. And there were instances where our fire department showed up first, for sure. And in some of those instances, there was a positive experience by the fire department being there, stabilizing the scene, providing very basic level support. To be frank, there were also cases where it was a negative experience. And so it was kind of a mixed bag of that.
Okay.
Again, going back, what was the mission of this group? It was about the service level, not about cost savings. And so Chafee Fire would be responding, able and responding to medical calls, especially if there was any chance of a delayed response by EMS. So I actually corresponded with Chief Bertram and Josh Hadley today about a call we had last Friday where BV Fire responded, got to the scene first, and EMS got there second. And we talked about how Chafee Fire would fill that kind of need through dispatch and how Chafee Fire can fill that. So I guess the quick answer is yes, EMS is continuing to look at their response on the north end. Part of that is their new facility planning they're doing over off of Gregg Drive, where they would be able to have living quarters next to their equipment. Right now, they're split from their equipment down off Antero Drive. That would be a big part of that. It would also allow them and give them space to expand their equipment there as well. So that's why Chafee EMS is pushing hard to get that facility up and going. And Josh Hadley says, more than happy to reply on any questions if you'd like to weigh in. Would you like to hear from him? I can move him in. All right, Josh. You're in. Chief Bertram, you're in as well. But Josh, did anything you want to add to what I explained there?
You know, I don't believe so. By the time I got everything typed out, you had it pretty well covered. Yeah, I think to speak to the questions in reference response times of utilizing, the valuable resource that we found. And I made it very clear to, Philip and the board that we recognize the changes that are occurring within our county on all ends, south end and north end. So to support the idea that you guys had in what was going to be the best service provided to the north end of the community is what we were advocating for, at least from my perspective of whatever that looks like. With that, we have some concerns. We do. I mean, as Philip had mentioned, the current response time challenge that we have of where we're currently stationed, of not being able to be with our apparatus and our response vehicles. It creates definitely a delay. If you were to go out and walk, just over 100 yards from point A to point B and then get into a vehicle, it has time associated with that. And it's a challenge, and the county fortunately is moving in a direction of remedying that. Other components of just service delivery within our community is, the fact that our receiving facility, the Level 4 Trauma Center in our community, is in Salida. So that leaves the north end of the county, unfortunately, in a position at times of where we have a response, or a medical response primarily, that's out of position. So those 16 calls, and I'm going to speak frankly to this, that Philip has spoken to, were the other medicals, the mutual aid calls. Those were those calls. Those were statistics that we were able to provide to this group as calls where we were not within a appropriate response time. So we know it's a gap in service delivery. Knowing that the board is potentially moving in a direction of this IGA, then we'll definitely put our staff on alert of when those calls happen, when we get caught in a position of where we're responding to the south end of the county with a patient and delivering them to Heart of the Rockies, and we drop that second call in the north end, that we're going to be requesting that automatic or that mutual aid with this throughout this IGA. The automatic aids would be those that we similarly have in place with Chaffee County Fire Protection District, which are for automobile accidents, for cardiac arrests, where they're really just high manpower incidents. Outside of that, I think that the data is speaking, and I think Philip has done a really good job of conveying that. Our long-term vision is to work on remedying this plan from a county's perspective, at least from my perspective, of providing additional providers available to help cover some of these calls so we don't have these prolonged response times, specifically when we get caught with transporting a patient to Heart of the Rockies ER. There are some additional provisions that are being looked at just from a federal level on identifying some additional facilities that might be appropriate for us to transport to. So there may be in the near future, within the coming years, opportunities for us to take maybe some of the non-critical, really non-emergent transports that we might do for a twisted ankle that needs an X-ray or some stitches. We might be able to deliver those to the clinic there in Buena Vista. So those are opportunities that are coming. I mean, it's called ET3. We're looking at that stuff right now. So again, we recognize that there's a bit of a gap. We're appreciative of Chief Bertram's efforts of what they've provided in the same capacity when it comes to the unincorporated areas of the north end of the county. We have this exact same model with them currently. And if you guys so choose to move forward with this opportunity with this IGA, then we'll definitely get that information conveyed to our staff, and it'll be a need. We're not blind to the idea that there is just some gaps, and us leaning on one another to support one another as we grow and as we develop is what we're hoping to do. Any other questions?
Trustees?
Not yet, Josh, but hang tight. So
Yes, sir.
you had another question, Trustee Swisher, about the cost and it tying back to our capital plan. Did I capture that right?
Right.
So we would be out of the capital planning for fire altogether. So our capital plan would no longer include that. The compensation that we provide to Chaffee Fire would include what they need to plan for their capital needs to service the town. So it would replace in our current budget, our general fund, what we're currently paying for our fire department, which is roughly $530,000. So it would fit into our general fund that way. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I do have a comment to that though. When we decide what we're spending on in capital equipment, what we think we need the most, sometimes it takes a year or two before we have the funds and whatever to do it. If they needed something and it went through, would it be anything like the recycling program where we end up with a great big jump in what our fee is because they have decided they need that equipment and it doesn't give us a choice of what order we would put it in? Does that make sense?
Great question. So I'm going to give a response and then Chief Bertram, I would ask for you to chime in as well. But ultimately my response is that is on them. They get a certain amount from the town each year. It is up to them to provide or to plan long-term or ongoing capital needs. If they need a bump in 1 year, it doesn't add to our annual amount unless our scope changes. Again, unless we put a demand on them that they need to add a piece of equipment that, like an ARF truck, going back to the airport example, then that would open up the discussion again of how does town contribute into their finances to help them pay for that. But regular fire trucks,
We wouldn't be charged any extra for what
No.
they purchased.
Correct. Chief Bertram, I'll give you a chance to reply just to make sure I answered that consistently with you.
Yes, that is correct. So it'd be just risk. Just as we operate right now, we plan for all of our capital expenses. We cover the town with what we have, but that would be on us as long as the scope stays the same. The airport's a great example. That'd be something we would discuss, but it would not be us coming to you to purchase a fire truck. We would do that as part of our capital planning.
Thank you.
Trustee Fay, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, for my edification, what is the relationship between Chafee EMS and the helicopter service?
Josh, you want to take that one?
Yeah, absolutely. Are you speaking of the local medevac service Reach?
Yeah. Mhm.
We have a good relationship with them. There was some growing pains, I'll just be honest, in the early, when it was Eagle Air, there was a lot of challenges that we found with the agency when it came to response times. And they were also trying to figure out a lot of things with how to function at a high altitude. I mean, Buena Vista is a place is notorious for having high altitude training. So there was a lot of issues that we had experienced with them early on. As of since, we just dealt with a interaction with them this evening of transporting out a very, very critical patient that we couldn't fly. They couldn't fly. They had capacities that we did not have. So we were able to kind of meld our services and work towards managing the patient. So I feel as if we have a good rapport with them right now. They're extremely busy. So kind of depending on what we need and where we are in the county, we'll utilize either our local asset, which is Reach, or we'll utilize Flight for Life, which is just over the hill in Frisco. So if it's closer to the far end, north end of our county, it may be a closer resource for us to use Flight for Life. But from my understanding, we have a good relationship.
Thank you.
Yep.
So our fee will be based annually off of assessed valuation each year. It will be recalculated each year.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct, which is mill levy based. Yes. Yep.
Other questions?
Trustee Eckstein had asked a question on the chat about the specific ownership tax, and I think Michelle answered that question, but I wouldn't mind trying to give a very quick explanation. It's not the clearest thing to understand, but I don't know, Chief Bertram, if you want to say something, or Michelle, regarding that tax percentage. They're just dying to get off mute, I can tell.
I was hoping somebody would go first. I don't know. Michelle, do you have an easy explanation for it?
It is, in a nutshell, and a very simplistic explanation for it is it's the personal property tax that you pay on the registration of your vehicles every year. And that amount is on the back of your registration receipt, and it is drawn out as SO tax.
And so the IGA contemplates that every year that percentage amount, which isn't a tax percentage that we pay, it's just the equivalent amount that Chafee Fire equates to what their portion of the specific ownership tax is in relation to their mill levy tax for their fire district. So in the example, it came out to 12.09%. So that's for this current year. So that's what we used for this structure. That could go down to 10, it could be 12.5. It might vary a little bit, but Robert, is anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so a big part on there, and we'll get to it in the IGA, is how we calculate that percentage. We want to go off actual numbers, not projected numbers. And then we take that percentage. And kind of an overview of specific ownership tax, they do not track when you register your vehicle if you're in town, if you're in county, everywhere else. Basically, they take the pot of money and they distribute it to all the taxing entities who collect property taxes, but they do it by the equivalent amount you get. So let's say, Chafee Fire gets 25% of the tax revenue overall from property tax. We would get 25% of the specific ownership distributed to us. And so that's where we came up. Most simplistic way is to do a calculation based off of the projected part of it.
Thank you, Chief Bertram. That really helps.
Other questions? So in this respect, presentation, next item on the agenda is the actual IGA. So are we ready to move into that? There are no other comments. Next item on the agenda, thank you for that presentation, by the way. Needed that. Next item is item D, adoption of resolution number 25, series 2021, entitled a resolution of the Board of Trustees for the town of Buena Vista, Colorado, approving an intergovernmental agreement between the town of Buena Vista and Shady County Fire Protection District for emergency services.
Thank you. So with the actual IGA that's in your packet, there's a resolution there that tries to capture in the whereases the intent, what we're looking at, what the services that we would be contracting with the fire district to provide for the town, and then an amount for the first year. So that's captured in the resolution. And then the actual draft IGA, which I feel like I covered in the presentation, but if you have any questions, we can certainly jump into specific areas of the IGA. I do want to also acknowledge one of the other questions that Trustee Swisher brought up about when we start looking at selling or transferring the equipment, what happens if we terminate this agreement, which is certainly something we have to consider because then the town is kind of forced back into deciding how do we get a fire service up and going. And so I think that is certainly something that we could look at doing with any proceeds from equipment, even the facility, if we wanted to, is just hold it for a while until we see how successful this is. And just in case of a worst case scenario, we had to turn around and repurchase anything. I seriously don't see that happening, but it's good to be prepared. So we could do that if the board would like to do that. The IGA does kind of outline how we're going to work together over the next several months, up to 180 days, evaluating our equipment. the town wants to retain the right to get a return on equipment, especially that has significant monetary value, back into our general fund, so that we can turn around and use that for other town priorities. But there's also quite a bit of equipment that may have minimal to no monetary value that we want to recommend transferring to Chaffey County Fire or other fire departments. We like to take care of some of the smaller ones in the state as well. So just to call that out, that we are talking about a process here over a few months to go through all that. So I'll pause there. Any questions?
Again, Chaffey County Fire has been around for eons. And as far as I know, there's always been a good working relationship. So it really has to be a severe bump in the road for this to go away.
Correct. It would have to be significant.
Question on the IGA, does that have to be renewed annually, or is this once and we're good? How does that?
It has a provision in there that it will renew up at the term. Let me see if I can find the term. Where's my little?
Section 11.
Thank you, Jeff. See, legal has reviewed this as well.
I threw it to Jeff, but I just kind of threw it out there.
Thank you,
saw
Jeff.
who it stuck on, so.
There we go. So after the expiration of the initial term, so it talks about renewal term. So it will automatically renew unless one of the entities goes through the termination steps.
Other questions, comments? Motion.
Make a motion and we approve adoption of resolution number 25, series 2021.
I'll second.
Second, trustee Swisher. Further discussion?
Sure. I'd like to just say that this absolutely maintains a high level of care and service to the community while improving efficiency. And I'm in full support of this.
Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Eckstein?
Yes.
Trustee Fay?
Yes.
Trustee Nyberg?
Yes.
Trustee Rowe?
Yes.
Trustee Swisher?
Yes.
Trustee Volpe?
Yes.
Thank you all very much and look forward to working with you.
Good job on all your research.
Thank you. I look forward to work with the town in the future with the fire service and keep moving on.
You bet. Take care. Next item, and Administrator Puckett touched on this, organizational change proposal. Town administrator will share an update and an update of the, there's an O missing or something there. So I'm not sure. State of the organization and make a proposal to adjust staffing levels in certain departments to sustain growth happening in town.
All right. Thank you, Mayor, for getting through that little blip. So yes, what I wanted to, you'll have to listen to me a little bit longer. So short presentation here. What I wanted to bring forward to you is an update on how things are going and some areas that I'm asking for the board to support me and your department heads to address areas where we're struggling a bit and we need some additional help. So moving to page 81 of your packet, I just want to acknowledge that sometimes we focus on what's not working, but I do want to kind of call out, we have a lot working well for us here. Our current staff is extremely skilled and dedicated to their jobs, to jumping in and helping wherever help is needed. And so we're very, very fortunate right now. And the board has done a great job of acknowledging that as we've gone along. Financially, I would say the town is in a very good place currently, and then looking ahead into the future. So thinking about, we've seen sales tax growth, which is great, and I know a lot of focus goes into that, but really understanding where that's coming from and the fact that it's coming from sustainable sources that will help continue a solid financial foundation is important. Plus, we have new revenue sources coming online, which is exciting as well. There are things happening in the next year or two in terms of our budget that we haven't really talked about, but are happening that will even help more. One of those is the sales tax reimbursement contribution that we're making to the True Value Agreement falls off the books here soon, which is a sizable amount of money that can go back into things like our street fund or other places the board may want to put that. So financially, things are working well. New development, we've got a great mix of residential, commercial, and now even industrial development happening in town that we've always kind of talked about and hoped for, but now we're actually seeing a lot of that. So good things happening from the private sector there. And then we've just really been doing a good job getting after a lot of the old topics that have been hanging out there. And I mentioned that just because those things tend to keep pulling you back, whether that's an IGA with the county or getting better working relationship with some of our partners. It's just, we've done a really good job in the last few years getting past some of these things that have been kind of hanging out. But we are experiencing quite a bit of growing pain. And this isn't new to any of you all. We're all seeing it. We've acknowledged it. We've talked about it. But there's just a high level of complexity with what we're dealing with these days that's not comparable to what we've seen in the past. The complexity of development, our special events are more complicated than every year. They seem to get more complex and more intertwined with larger events or more things going on. And then we have to deal with more regulations as well. So just complexity in general. Our demographics and our population are changing. I'm very eager to see what the census comes up with, but I don't think we need that to see that we have more people. We have more families, have more people that are wanting to participate in rec programs. Different needs, different things are happening with that changing demographic. And then that kind of results with, we haven't really grown much as a staff outside of our emergency services areas. And so what happens is we start losing our capacities to actually go after opportunities. Like, hey, that Main Street grant could cover a lot of great stuff. Cool, who does that? Like, where do I pull resource to go get some of those things done? So we're starting to miss on opportunities as well as addressing issues. Whenever something pops up and a process isn't working, to pull people off of the day job to go deal with that has a large impact on all of us, including our applicants. So that's becoming harder and harder to deal with. And then we're more involved with our partners. We've got great partnerships with Forest Service, BLM, Garna, the county, Envision, Common Ground, all these other entities that are very active now. And that's great, but that's also pulling our staff time into maintaining those things and actually trying to get things done that are important to the town. And all of that results in staff burnout. Not a surprise there. So here's what I'm bringing forward for the board to consider in terms of some organizational changes. The first is adding to our planning department. So the town has fluctuated in the planning department for a long time. We've gone up and down. Over the last 2 years, we've had 2 people in our planning department, and we've outsourced quite a bit to RG. And we were up to 3 people in the planning department. And I wanted to take a breath and just see, okay, what skill sets do we need? What's the current demand from our development community? What types of projects are we going to be involved with before we just hired a replacement for that 3rd person? What we're seeing is a substantial amount of work is being outsourced right now, which is expensive. And again, kind of going back to the complexities of what we're facing, we have a lot of discussions, what if discussions with amazing ideas, amazing projects, but that pulls our planning department from getting what they're working on done, pulls them out of that into those kinds of conversations. Inevitably, because of our mix of skill sets, it pulls myself, it pulls Joel. And so we end up sucking a lot of time into that. We're proposing to add a planning director that would be over the existing planning department that would report to the town administrator. This skill set would be really that long range planning that we lack right now, that would be in discussions about the kinds of things like, hey, where do we put a factory? Where's the next industrial thing happening? How do we manage the meadows and the events out there? And what about these annexation potentials? And the Housing Authority has a great concept about policy changes. How do we spend time and evaluate that? Not to mention things like comprehensive plans and updating master plans, which we're about to start getting into some of those discussions. Huge time suck. If we pull from our existing staffing there, we're going to struggle quite a bit because we're pulling people off of getting things in and out of our system. So that's one change. The next one is a kind of again, we had a staffed civil engineer under Public Works. We were fortunate to have that person in place, and we were really gaining a lot of traction in our Public Works department. And unfortunately, that person left to start their own business. And we still contract a bit with Al. He's great, but Sean and our Public Works team need help. The amount of time spent on development plan reviews is extensive. And we have Sean going in all sorts of directions. And again, it shows up not only in staff burnout, but being able to go deal with other parts of Public Works, whether that's in parks or streets, or, hey, we need this sign up, or, all of those other components start to suffer because we are spending a lot of time in these engineer type situations. So we would like to pull that back into a staff position as we had it. Again, a lot of that is already in our budget because we outsource a lot of that work right now. So we would shift a lot from our existing budget to cover this, but it's just acknowledging that we need that person on staff. We need that person to be able to go to the sites, the building sites and all of that. So we need them here in town. And then finally, our rec department is just going through a huge growth right now. And we anticipated this a few years back when our rec department started taking on all of soccer, baseball, football. All of these programs used to be handled by other entities. They weren't covered by the town rec department. We pulled those in over the last several years because we knew we had a good system, and it's proving to be very successful because now our enrollments are growing substantially. And we're in that department, we do a lot of analysis on grant opportunities. There's a lot of meetings with our partner groups and vision and things like that. So we're straining quite a bit there. So there's two recommendations out of that department. One is we have a rec program assistant on staff now that again works part-time, roughly 30 hours a week. We're proposing to make that a full-time position, working with Shane, our program lead coordinator, sorry. And then hiring a part-time recreation administrative assistant. Again, this is really focused on helping our rec director manage the combination of reports, pursuing grants and doing those types of things and staying organized there. And just kind of helping with a lot of those administrative tasks so that our rec director, who right now we have an amazing person in Earl, can stay focused on the high value activities that we're seeing a lot of results from, being involved, active in the community, getting things done. So those are the recommendations I'm bringing forward tonight. And another interesting color on the screen. I wanted to show you how, okay, what are those puts and takes look like compared to our 2021 budget and then an annual look. So let me first focus on how does that look compared to our baseline budget for this year if the board were to approve these changes tonight and we pursued filling these positions, what would that look like? So first of all, I wanted to acknowledge now that the IGA is approved, there is a savings in the overall fire service changes that were just approved. So that's that $96,000 there. Getting a planning director on board would add the $57,500. These are full costs, including benefits and everything. Public Works engineer would add 12,000. Again, a lot of that's already in the budget under professional fees. So we would just move those monies over in addition to this 12,000 to get that done. The recreation program assistant moving to full-time would be 15,000. And then the recreation administrative assistant part-time would be 8,000. So a net change in our 2021 budget would actually reduce by a little over $3,000. So that's a look at 2021. What would 2022 look like if we continued forward as we are as we're set up now compared to all of these changes? So the fire service changes would save $220,000 there, and then you can see the same numbers. And then bottom line, we would look at about a $35,000 savings in our general fund with all of these puts and takes on a full year basis. So ultimately, this is the request for the board. I'm looking for a motion to approve with any amendments to this proposal or deny. And then again, specifically, we would be amending the budget by these amounts as well. So it's an overall decrease in our general fund, but I want to make sure Michelle had the detail that she can go amend the budget by these amounts to make these next steps happen. So with that, I'll pause. Any questions, comments?
I have a question about the planning department, whether in addition to the planning director, whether you need more of a junior person who can be down in the trenches and really working on the permits and plans and just generally helping out.
It's a possibility. I want to start with this first and then reevaluate, because what this does is it frees up Mark to do current, what his skill set really is aimed at and what he's very, very good at, which is current planning, which is handling the things that are currently coming through. He and Doug have really not had a chance to do that all that much because he's getting pulled into so many other topics. So I'd like to give it a chance. We're still going to use RG a bit, but much less than we are now. But they're now used to our process and everything. So I'd like to see where this takes us, and then we could reevaluate at budget season.
Anyone else? Comments?
Sure, I do.
Yes.
Thank you. I'd be in support of these additions to the team. Based on financial benchmarking, these are all very reasonable requests. I did want to make a suggestion for a planner, possibly finding one that has been through, has a lot of experience, and especially working with a community that's under heavy developmental pressure, such as BV. I think they would be great for them to bring their expertise to us. And then also someone with design experience, both for aesthetic and urban streetscape design. As a board member, just having someone that can offer insight or expertise on decisions such as streetlights, angled versus parallel parking, and public art would really benefit this community, I think. And I It's great that I've seen Al Smith. If you read in the notes, there was a great interaction between Al Smith and another water board member. And I think having an engineer in that capacity is crucial, just with his level of knowledge, someone similar to that. And for the rec department, the town has expressed an interest in attracting and retaining families. And families want recreational amenities. So I'm in full support of that. Also, Rec and Balance is going to probably need a lot more help as well. So I'm in full support. Thank you.
Other comments, trustees?
So on this public works engineer, their salary is gonna be what?
It ends up being about the same as the planning director. So it's going to be roughly 110 to 120, including salary, benefits, and all the expenses associated with that. What happened, Trustee Nyberg, in 2020, when Al Smith left, when we created the 2021 budget, we wanted to make sure we had capacity to support public works with the engineers. So we moved a lot of the expense to professional fees and outside services under public works and under 50/50 under public works and under water. And so what we would be doing is shifting a majority of that back to cover most of the cost of this new position, but it doesn't cover it all because we actually reduced that amount coming into 2021. So this 12,000 for this year and that 25,000 for next year is only a portion of that cost. We have most of it contained in the budget already. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it just seems like, number one, the planning director, that's a pretty good chunk of change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't want to mess around. It's not a junior level employee. This is somebody that would come in with that high level skill set. Again, being able to handle these conversations with developers and so on, that has that political savvy. This is not somebody that's just out of school. This is somebody that's been doing it for a while.
And that number is total cost estimated.
Sure.
That's insurance, all of the expenses.
Yeah.
Base 120 plus that, what is it now, Michelle, 35%?
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's used to be 25.
Yep.
I know it's substantially more than that now. So and that's why that number is exaggerated. And it's because it includes all of that.
Right. And this is an up to amount, really. We're not going to come out offering our top amount to a candidate. Kind of depends on what candidates we can find. But this puts a salary in that range of 80, 85,000. So it's a director level position, and we've got to compete. I mean,
Where are you gonna put them?
In the what we call the box office now, upstairs.
It used to be the box.
It's
The crawl space between the floors in town hall.
we have a vacant office right now upstairs in town hall. I've kicked 2 people out of that office, so we have room.
I think that's great. That's the caliber of person that is really needed to do that job, I think. So I'm glad that you're allocating that much, Philip.
Yeah, and that you were talking about how we contract a lot of our planning out. Will that free up staff, Mark and the rest of the planning department to work on that so we wouldn't have to contract?
Yes, that is. We'll still contract a little, but not nearly what we're doing right now. So yes, that's the
So
hope.
that'll offset a lot of that cost as well.
It will offset some. Right now, we're going at a pace where we're going over our budget too with the outsourced planning costs. So I didn't show the offset, but you're right. Some of that will offset that amount that we're showing right there. That's right.
Yeah, I think it's great, any way we can keep our awesome staff and support them and also bring great people in to support our town. I think this is a win for everybody, so. Like it.
Other comments?
Good planning.
Thank you.
I know Administrator Puckett is looking for a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the town administrator's proposal for staffing of Public Works, Planning and Recreation, and to amend the budget 2021.
Second by Trustee Eckstein. Further discussion? I will say, and here's what I see. And if you look around this room and you look on the board, what we ask of our staff is not 40 hours a week.
No.
And if it was any other business, you wouldn't get what you're getting now for the money you're paying. So it's like one of those things you just go, okay, start paying overtime, start paying, and you will be paying those kind of dollars and cents. No matter what, you will be paying it. Staff burnout concerns me. I've seen it in the past and I can see it coming when it's coming. And so this is a good move, definitely. One thing that I would propose to the board is to give consideration. We give 1% of our sales tax to nonprofits every year. I would think the board should consider giving a new position every year in staff the same way. It's only appropriate. We make sure we buy police cars so that we don't run out of police cars. Why the growth we're experiencing, why would you not expect to do the same thing when it comes to personnel?
Well, that brings up a question. When and how many police officers we're gonna get this year?
We budgeted for one additional in 2021, but we were down 2 coming into the year. So we're adding 3 people, but 2 were already in the baseline, if that makes sense. We were adding a net 1 in 2021.
Short going into the year.
Correct.
I mean,
That's what needs to be beefed up.
you know, and that's all consideration. I don't disagree. I think that's something we have to look at when we're talking planning department. We're doing 100 houses now. We were doing 13.
Yeah.
14. Come on.
I would like to also acknowledge that mainly for people that are listening. 4 years ago, I made it #1 priority to boost up our emergency services. So we actually pulled back in several departments to make room for that in our budget. And so we have been doing that over the last few years. This is addressing where I see things could get bad if we don't do something.
Well, I'm just looking at the burnout aspect.
Yeah.
For Dean and the rest of these crews, they're gonna get burned out.
Yeah.
Especially coming into the summer.
I mean, that's a consideration, I think, Norman, and I appreciate that is a consideration this board needs to look at on an annual basis, is that we need to look at those increases. And I know Philip's on top of it, like you say, he had a priority going in. He's helped with that. Personnel, it's always hard to find personnel, but now you have to back up and say, okay, where did I cut short? But I think it's something to keep that door open, give it consideration every year. I really do.
Right.
It just needs to be happening. So we have a first, a second. Any more further discussion? Roll call, please.
Trustee Eckstein,
Yes.
trustee Fay,
Yes.
trustee Nyberg,
Yes.
trustee Rowe,
Yes.
trustee Swisher,
Yes.
trustee Volpe.
Yes.
Thank you all very much, and thank you, Philip.
Thank you all.
Next item is the amendments to the 2021 fee schedule. The board will consider amending the 2021 fee schedule for the airport to align landing and ramp fees to make it easier for both customers and staff. Airport hangar fees will also be adjusted to give pilots an incentive to hangar aircraft for longer periods. Philip?
I think you captured it well, Mayor. That's exactly what is on the, So highlighted in the packet is the fee schedule update, and I apologize. We usually try to batch these a little bit better where you're not looking at the fee schedule in back-to-back meetings, but we didn't catch these airport ones, but I think they are important, especially as we get into the summer season. So what Jack and Chandra have brought forward, I think is a very logical way to adjust where we were seeing some interesting nuances. One is just making consistent our landing fees and ramp fees so that they make a little bit more sense. They're in line with each other. I think the bigger one that we were starting to see is that we have daily or nightly, weekly, and monthly hangar space fees, and we were having some pilots start to play the game of, well, I'm going to stay 2 weeks and 2 days, but I don't want to pay for a month. And so it was just starting to become a little bit of a loophole a bit. And so they've come up with adjusted monthly rates and weekly rates, nightly rates for the turboprop there. So it's mainly adjusting our monthly rates and then kind of aligning those things, or they were going to pay for, I guess the monthly rates were too low. So it's adjusting those up so that they make a little bit more sense in conjunction with the nightly and weekly rates. So any questions about that?
Looks good.
Okay.
Motion? Please.
Make the motion to approve the amendments to the 2021 fee schedule.
A second.
Second, trustee Rowe. Further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Eckstein,
Yes.
trustee,
Yes.
trustee Nyberg,
Yes.
trustee Rowe,
Yes.
trustee Swisher,
Yes.
trustee Bolte.
Yes.
Thank you all very much. And as if Philip hasn't
Extra water now.
I've got water now.
Good for the night.
This will be quick, I promise. And I've said 3 minutes per report. Okay, here we go. Just a few quick updates. Today I finally received an email about the American Rescue Plan Act, the ARP funds. It looks like Michelle and I have something to look at tomorrow. Possibly we have to go out to a website and request our funds. It's kind of a strange setup so far, it seems. But we are anticipating to get our first payment here pretty soon once we know how to request it. And that will give us roughly $310,000. So that'll be good, and that'll kick off more conversations with you all about how we want to proceed with that. But we are continuing to track our COVID-related expenses, and we'll have a good accounting of all of that moving forward. The chamber is out of we'll call it the chapel building, just for clarification, since there's 2 St. Rose of Lima structures in town. But that's looking to be in good order. I think Paula is going to be meeting with the Beautification Advisory Board for their May meeting in the building. They're gonna spend some time looking around at the facility and seeing if there's beautification opportunities outside the facility out there, things like that. But I think we're gonna proceed discussions with our rec staff about how we integrate that into our rental facility options, and start generating a little bit of revenue, because we all know that facility is going to need some reinvestment at some point. So we'll probably spend some time during budget season talking about how we might want to use this, if we want to continue to own it and operate it as a rental facility, or if there's other desires for it. But there definitely seems to be demand for facility space, so we're gonna give that a shot. We are preparing a second Revitalizing Main Street grant. We had mentioned this at a previous meeting. I think Trustee Nyberg had mentioned the concept of looking at our street lamps that we've talked about for years on Main Street. And that really resonated with us when we went back and evaluated the grant criteria. It's a project that between us and Sangre de Cristo, we feel like we could actually tackle. And so we're putting together a grant proposal that would replace, basically replace all of the outdated poles and get a consistent light, LED lighting up and down Main Street for those decorative lights. So we're excited about that opportunity. And then finally, just a quick follow-up on the recent discussions we've had on the recreation mitigation plans and those types of things. They'll be back next meeting, I believe, to present the actual plan. But I did want to follow up. We had some more discussion with Chafee Common Ground about, hey, what's next in the wildfire mitigation? You know, because we've identified our source water area. So they're actually talking with private property owners in the Cottonwood Creek area, specifically North Cottonwood Creek, which is our priority. That's where our main diversion is for our gallery system, gauging who's open to mitigation and who's not from a private property standpoint. So they, once they have a good scope for a project there, they'll be back to present that to you all at that time. So, and then finally, it came up a little bit in the work session, but Boys and Girls Club held a kind of a public meeting with some of their constituents last week, and Mark and Earl and I attended that. And they're getting some energy about their facility and some excitement. And you know, again, I think there's potential here on our site if that other location doesn't work out, or if we want to proactively go after them about it. But you know, I'm open to more discussion with the board if you have thoughts after tonight about that. I'd love direction on that, because again, if that's a recreation center kind of vibe we want there, if Boys and Girls Club is moving forward with their facility, it might be a great opportunity. So
Probably benefit them in the long run, but the time they start digging over there, they're gonna run into some biggins.
for sure. For sure. And again, that's obviously we're in a meeting, but this hasn't been discussed with them yet either. I wanted to bring it to you all first. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Trustees? I'm thinking consideration for security cameras at the chapel.
Yeah, historic building, public rentals.
Well, it's going to be empty now. And then the thought of renting it. Also, you're going to probably end up doing that anyway, but.
It actually might help to use it as a rental because we'll have eyes on it on a more regular basis as opposed to being empty.
That's what
was another consideration, but security on it is.
We're going to have a meeting there, you know, just to show activity, if nothing else.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would give that consideration.
Okay.
Obviously.
What our meetings there?
Board chambers.
I'm thinking, yeah, why not? Also, they make LED lights that change color for Main Street.
Really, in the long run, won't the LED lights possibly save us some power?
Oh, yes.
Bunch.
Our utility bill is sizable.
And especially on those lights,
Mhm.
because those are old lights.
Mhm.
They're sucking.
Over the mirror.
Yeah, they are. Thanks, Norm, for reminding everybody. Anything else? Thank you, Philip.
Thank you all.
Michelle?
Thank you, Mayor, trustees. My report is on page 103 in the packet. And I plug, as I do every meeting, the transparency website and the budget URL for 2021. A summary of the town expenditures and expenditures over 2,000. And I will take questions at this time.
Questions for Michelle?
So it looks like you saved some money on police cars.
Uh,
I thought they were gonna be like over 50,000 each.
They will be.
Oh, okay.
They get
This
outfitted.
is just the cars, because it took 10 months for them to upfit, for the upfit company to complete the upfitting of the police cars last year. And Spradley Bar did not want to, they wanted to be paid for the cars because they are in and they're at the place that does the upfit. So we will be paying for the upfitting separately, but then
Okay.
that'll bring it to, that'll be another $40,000.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything else, Michelle? Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Police Chief.
Hey, everybody, hope everyone's doing good. I'll just go through my report really quickly here. We've been meeting with the rec department on all the events coming up this summer. It's going to be a busy summer for the town and for the police department. Bike to School Day was May 6th, and Officer DiGirolamo, our school resource officer, was able to give the kids a police escort over to Avery Parsons to help keep them safe. I've been meeting with CDOT and Colorado Post about a couple grants you can read about there. We had a meeting with some of the local law enforcement department heads in the area, Fremont County, Chaffee, Salida PD. All of them have discussed issues with police recruitment. It's something we've been working on. And one of the most common complaints that a lot of these agencies receive, and it's pretty similar with Buena Vista, is a lot of people complain about traffic. So we've been definitely trying to step it up in that area. The biggest thing to remember about traffic enforcement is it's about safety. From mid-April, or from January to mid-April of 2020, we had about 78 citations. This year we had 223. So officers have really stepped it up. But we've also really seen a lot of really heavy traffic coming into town too. Sorry about that. Let's see here.
Well,
I'll go to dispatch.
One last call for service.
Yes, exactly. And
Oh, they're back.
hey, Philip, do you want to go to someone else real quick? While I
Yeah,
answer?
go for it, Dean. We'll go on. Chris, you want to jump in here?
Are you with us, Chris?
Yeah, I'm here. There I am. Well, geez. I guess as probably my last official report to you guys as the interim fire chief. I just wanted to reassure you guys that we'll provide a quality protection and service to the community to the end. So I just wanted to thank you guys so much for supporting me, my department. I understand the decision, you know, the call volume versus the expense that the town goes through. It just makes sense, you know, and I was on board with the idea back when Philip first brought it up. So I get it. It's a tough position to be in, but I understand. So I just wanted to thank all my guys for their support. It's one of those things that, of course, you know, nobody wants to go through anything like this, but I think their hearts were always in it. So I wanted to thank them. Thank you. Hopefully I get to work with you guys for the next few months, taking care of the department and take care of the town. So I'm still here. Feel free to call me whenever you need. And just thank you for all the support. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Chris. Do we want to jump to?
Dean's back.
Dean's back.
Thank you, Chris.
I'll finish up my report real quickly. Yeah, that needed to go to dispatch. Somebody's having car troubles out on the Midland. So let's see. So yeah, as Trustee Nyberg mentioned, you know, about needing police help and police services and, you know, concerns about employee burnout. Officers have been hitting traffic pretty hard, working on that. But, we can't hit traffic when we're slammed with other calls. And as an example, the other night, Sergeant Adair worked an 18-hour shift. He had a suicidal person that turned into a drug bust, and he had to call out Corporal Mitchell to help him with that. So officers are definitely getting hit with a lot of stuff. And I'm afraid as summer comes, it's going to be a lot more difficult for us. One of the nice things about that, though, is we do have Jake England, our cadet. He's starting with us on May 17th. He graduates on Friday. So myself and my sergeants are going to go be part of his graduation, and we're pretty excited about that. We're also gearing up for prom season and graduation. It's the same day this year, May 29th. And my quarter 2 newsletter submission was about prom season and underage drinking and the dangers related to that. Then the last things there, you can just see in my report, just talks about our field training program. It's a 14-week program modeled after, it's called the San Jose model. It came up with San Jose Police Department. It's been used for years. And just upcoming trainings this week, Investigator Lee's at an investigators training. And we're sending Corporal Mitchell to a field training officer school. And then on Tuesday, I'm doing active shooter training for a new officer and a couple other people, and radar and laser training on the 19th to get everyone certified on those speed measuring devices. That's all I have. Thank you.
Dean, I had a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, is tip a cop kind of like tipping a cow?
I did forget to mention that. Yeah, it's at Jan's on the 15th, Tip a Cop. It raises money for Special Olympics. But yeah, hopefully it's not like tip a cow.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Dean.
Yeah, good question though. Thanks.
Next, I don't believe Earl's here, but we've got, did I see Ben was on the line?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, trustees. This is Ben. I'm filling in for Earl tonight. He's out of town. As directed by the trustees, we took the Tri-View proposal to our Recreation Advisory Board with the hopes of getting some input on the master plan. We got some interesting feedback regarding that. There wasn't so much of a focus on potential for the master plan, just more of a concern that this is approached in a slow and cautious manner to ensure that the town really does benefit from the relationship or potential relationship with that organization. As far as facilities go, we did finalize our agreement with DPCA. Great thing about that is we utilize that facility. It's an indoor gym. We will be refurbishing the floors to include painting the lines. That will save a significant amount of manpower as far as not having to tape those lines every 2 weeks. Also, that locked in our fees and our ability to utilize those facilities for the next 5 years. We saw the previous year, it was very difficult with the new school construction to get facilities for our programming with all the other activities happening throughout town. As far as special events go here in town, we had Keeping Beauty Buena. That was in April, and that was a great expansion of the annual River Park cleanup. We had over 150 folks show up, mostly families, some really great feedback, and we filled up an entire dumpster of waste from across town. Really appreciate the town staff that came out to support that. It was great. Public Works really helped out with that. Chief County Waste donated a dumpster, and looks like next year we'll probably be doing that twice a year because we can definitely use that. As far as programming goes, soccer is winding down. It's finishing this weekend, and we had over 200 kiddos in that youth soccer program, which is just an absolute record breaker there. Our youth softball and baseball and adult softball programs are open for registration, so we encourage everybody to sign up. It looks like we'll be having a new youth mountain biking program taught by Mike Crana later this summer, so we're excited about that. And then for special events, yeah, they're definitely back. It's going to be busy this summer. Expect roughly one special event here in town per weekend. But just wanted to say, really appreciate all the town staff helping me through that process. We've got a lot of applications, and some folks that come from out of the area with new event proposals just don't understand our limitations with our infrastructure. So I appreciate all the departments helping me out with that, as well as their patience and as we help train and guide those event organizers to ensure we have safe events through our community. Subject to your questions or concerns, that's our report from the Fun Factory.
Well, thank you, Ben. Does anybody have questions?
Faster than Earl.
What's that?
Faster.
Yeah.
You're hired.
Good job.
Well, I actually have a few more things to cover. Sorry. I'll fix that.
Hey, Ben, I'm really curious to hear anything, pass along anything about the Tri-View from the rec board that caught my interest in your report. I'm just really curious to hear from any specifics from the rec board on Tri-View in the future.
Absolutely. I mean, as that progresses, we'll definitely be in contact with them. But for now, it's just, hey, this could be interesting, but let's make sure this is in the best interest of the town, not only now, but also 10, 15, 20 years in the future.
Thank you, Ben. Next item is trustee staff interaction. Let's go ahead and start with Dean.
I gave him the go ahead to sign off.
Good.
Yeah.
That's why I'm going to start with him, so.
Yeah.
And he's got it here.
He's still on, but he better be signing off.
No, I'm still here. Sorry, I couldn't find the right clicker. Yeah, I don't really have anything to add. I'm still wrapping my mind around tipping cows, but besides that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Dean. Have a good night.
All right, thank you all.
Trustee Fay.
Well, I would like to thank the town and particularly Public Works for fixing the bridge on James Street and putting up a really nice sign that says 1-lane bridge. So I appreciate you doing that.
You. Public Works Director Sean Williams.
Thanks, Trustee Fay. Yeah, a little long time coming there, but yeah, I appreciate finally getting that done. I guess I got one good thing, not this Friday, but next Friday, Town of Buena Vista cleanup days. So out at Public Works, I think we have flyers on the website and we have some notifications in the paper. So, but if anybody's asking, we got that going on here, not this weekend, but next weekend.
And that is both Friday and Saturday?
Yep, Friday and Saturday.
Thank you.
Yep.
Town Treasurer Michelle.
So you wanted to see the face of burnout, you look right here. No, actually, I'm feeling really good this week because I had a really rough week last week. The auditors came and did field work a couple weeks ago. It wasn't last week, it was the week before. And they still have one day left that they need to finish up. And it's just a crazy year, just like last year. It's just everybody has different stuff to deal with instead of all the pandemic stuff. But other than that, I'm doing good.
Thank you, Michelle. Special Projects Manager Joel Benson.
Hey, thanks everyone. I don't have anything other than to say thanks for supporting Philip's idea with those other 3 staff kind of rearranging their different positions. I think that'll be a great thing. And also to say thanks for the opportunity to have Sarah and Courtney do that project this spring. And I know you guys gave the approval for that. And I think it's a really good thing in the right direction. And so thanks for that. That's all.
Thank you, Joel. Town Attorney Jeff Parker.
Nothing for you tonight. Everything's smooth on the legal front.
It's going to snow down there tomorrow.
It's been snowing here all afternoon. It's not sticking though.
Oh, there you go. Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah,
Michael,
thank you.
Michael, do you have anything?
I do not have anything to add.
Okay. Trustee Eckstein?
Sure. I meant to mention this earlier, but in the minutes from the last meeting on page 11 of the packet, if Lillian wanted to scroll there. Motion number 9, the executive session. It mentions that it was for Triview, and I think the last one was for Chaffey County Fire Protection District. I don't know. I think.
That's correct.
Well, okay. So I don't know. Mayor, would you need an amendment, a move to amend?
She can change that. That's not a problem.
And then in terms of soliciting feedback, Philip, on the town project, if you or the mayor or Libby want to, I don't know how to move that forward or what the best way to do it. I know we have some time, but I'm not sure how that works, the feedback. Just let me know.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Nyberg.
The only thing I have is what they find out on those vehicles parked on the street over there down from all around.
I'm not sure they're on our right of way. So that's where they're looking at now, is exactly where the right of way starts. You're talking about on Chestnut? Yeah, so now they're trying, because if they are on the right of way, then they would be in violation of that. But now they're looking at, is that private property or not? So that's where they're digging into it now.
Good. Ready? Trustee Swisher?
I really don't have anything. I want to thank Chris Green for being the interim fire chief, all the work that he's done, knowing that he's working himself out of a position, and he's done a great job. That's it.
Thank you. Trustee Rowe.
Yeah, I want to echo what Trustee Swisher said. And being on the fire steering committee, we thought a lot about town staff and how this would affect them. And we really appreciated Acting Chief Chris Green and his help and his expertise in the area. And he was super helpful in our thought process and getting to where we are now. So I really appreciate that. And I also really appreciate the firefighters who stuck with us through this. And I know they knew something was coming down. So I really appreciate what BB Fire has done, and I look forward to see what'll happen next. The other thing I was kind of thinking about last minute just now was I was remembering when I was first trustee years ago, I toured all the facilities and did a ride along with then Sergeant Morgan. And I would be interested in doing something like that again, as long as it doesn't take up staff time or something, just to see I haven't been to Public Works, and now that COVID is coming down and we're getting vaccinated, it would be great to review the different facilities and parts of town. So if there is a time somewhere in the next few months that could work, I'd be interested in that. But other than that, I'm good.
Good point. And thank you very much. Trustee Volpe.
Okay, nothing.
Kirk. Oliver.
Just a reminder, if you haven't RSVP'd, we can tour the purchase of town farm on Friday. So let Lillian and I know, and make sure we have plenty of pizza and salad.
Trustee Nyberg.
When is the official census going to be out?
I don't think anybody knows.
At our level, it was like towards the end of summer.
Last I heard, yeah, yep. They're at the state level now, state and federal level. They've released some of the trends, but to get down to the county municipal level, I think it's the end of summer.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's gonna be weird. Deputy Clerk,
I have nothing.
don't have anything. I see Ben's hanging on. Ben, do you have something else?
Just want to say thank you, trustees, for supporting the staff modifications. We think that'll really help us out. So thank you.
Thank you, Ben. We hope so. Keep you alive. Principal Planner Doring, did he leave?
He's off.
He's off. Administrator Puckett.
Nothing. You've heard enough from me. Nothing.
How's your spelling?
I wanted to point out, I guess just a word that Philip used, and it was acknowledge. And that's, I think, something we have to sit back as a board and acknowledge what's going on around us, realize what's happening in this town, and it's a big impact. I know what I started at 10 years ago and what it is now is no comparison. Not at all. And I know you and I sat on that board together and it's changed so much what's going on out there. So keep that, acknowledge what's going on. That's a nice word. I like that. The other thing it's not my style, but I'm going to try to be a little more professional up here. I know tipping cows just didn't quite fall.
But you can start now.
There's going to be a little bit more of the trustee and town clerk and administrator words dropping. So if I stutter and hesitate, you know why. It's not my style, but I'm going to try to bring a little more professionalism behind this table if I can. So I appreciate everybody. I would entertain a motion.
Second.
Second, Volpe. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thanks, everybody.
No more cow tipping.